Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tight Lines Podcast. In this week's episode, we all know Walmart has great deals on fishing items, but are they really worth it? Let's find out. We will discuss 3 items you should be buying at Walmart and 3 items I don't think you should ever buy at Walmart and should just go to a true sporting goods store, outdoor store, fishing store, a non-Walmart to buy. After that, we will begin our first ever tackle box segment where we crack open the tackle box and answer your fishing questions. How this is going to go down, we will begin with the items I feel you should be buying at Walmart. We're going to talk brand names and price comparisons with other stores. Then we will jump into the 3 items I believe you should never buy at a Walmart and should take your money elsewhere. And again, we will talk about brand names and price comparisons, etc. I'll give you my reasons. Feel free to write in what you guys feel, if I'm correct, if I'm incorrect, and we will go from there. So, we're going to jump right into it. We're not going to mess around today. Starting off with buying at Walmart. Number 1, and this is one that if you use it, obviously, but it's going to be snaps. So everyone knows the snap that you use for the quick changing of lures. I'm not talking the swivel snaps. I'm talking just the true little snap clips like what you find on the end of like one like the big blade chatterbaits. Or you can just, they're in a 10-pack. They're Eagle Claw brand. And we're going to talk Eagle Claw brand specific today. We're not going to talk Spro or any of these other brands. We're talking the one that is most widely found. So for Eagle Claw brand snaps, it's a 10-pack. It's what they come in. And at Walmart, they are 94 cents for the 10-pack, which comes out 9.4 cents per snap, compared to between $1.29 and $1.99 at a Sportsman's Warehouse, at an Academy, or at a Dick's Sporting Goods. Those, I think, Sportsman's Warehouse was the cheapest at $1.29, Academy was $1.49, and Dick's was $1.99. So you're spending over double for the same thing at a Dick's Sporting Goods. So as you know, we've talked our brand. So why do this at Walmart? So these snaps, if you've ever seen them, they're this little tiny packet, little tiny like plastic envelope. There's 10 of them in there. They don't weigh anything, and they're impossible to damage in shipping, right? And all, they're not going to fail you because they're sold at Walmart, right? So these snaps are really good for clipping and unclipping baits to change quickly. I use them on almost everything except for like spinner baits and buzz baits, just because they kind of slide around real bad on them. I like them for a lot of other things because it's, instead of tying a loop knot, you can use a snap, and it allows for a much freer motion when you're fishing. But they're not going to be damaged in shipping. They're the same everywhere you go. 94 cents for a 10-pack compared to $1.29 to $1.99. That's, at $1.29 maybe not, but if you're buying snaps and you're buying a couple packs, you start looking at $1.99 a pack compared to 94 cents. That is a lot of extra money to be spending on a little tiny metal clip that it doesn't make a difference where you buy it at. So, in my opinion, I believe that you should be utilizing Walmart for these purchases for snaps. The next one we're going to talk about today that you should be buying at a Walmart is braided line scissors. So everyone knows when you're cutting braided line that the most important thing you need is some really good sharp scissors that are actually going to cut. The issue that you run into though is sometimes they get extremely, extremely expensive. So Ozark Trail is a Walmart brand. They make all sorts of outdoor supplies. They have fishing lures, they have tents, they have water bottles. They make fillet knives. They make literally everything. But they also make braided line scissors. And these are the scissors that I keep with me. So if you're starting to look at, the next brand that people typically use would be like a Googan brand or a Rapala brand, or Rapala, however you want to pronounce it, but I say Rapala. Rapala, if you go get a pair of braid line scissors from them, at Tackle Warehouse is going to be $3.99. And if you go to Dick's Sporting Goods, because that's what's close to you, it's going to cost you $7.99 for those scissors. The same exact scissors pretty much from the Ozark Trail brand, which is probably made in a very similar line on a factory in China, is $2.97. So my thought process is I have multiple tackle boxes, and I also have my workstation at home, and so I just keep a pair of scissors for each one, right? Because you don't want to be running around with the same pair of scissors, and then you forget it in one of your boxes one day. Because I've got my river box, got my creek box, got my catfishing box, right? And you don't want to leave it in your catfishing box when you're out at the creek, and all of a sudden, you've got 10-pound braid you need to cut, and you got no way to cut it, and you sit there and try and gnaw through it like a beaver, because we don't want to do that. So At $2.97, I've got 4 pair of these scissors, so I've spent just under $12, right? Quick math, just under $12. If I were to have just gone to Dick's Sporting Goods down at the end of the road instead of going to the Walmart, that would have cost me $32 at $7.99 a pair. Think about that. 32 compared to $12. Let's say $20 savings. I mean, $20, that's almost a Vision 110 jerkbait you just saved yourself right there. So in my end, I mean, they're plenty sharp. So I've been using them for years. They're plenty sharp. They do the trick. They cut through just fine. They don't tear stuff up. They don't lose their sharpness. And guess what? It's scissors. You can resharpen them just like any other pair of scissors. So in my opinion, I believe braided line scissors, especially the Ozark Trail brand at $2.97, you got to hunt for them. There's typically in the back of the section, kind of hanging up real small. They're kind of out of the way because they're hard to find. But I think they're an excellent deal. And I would definitely be buying braided line scissors at Walmart compared to going to anywhere else. The last one we're going to talk about, sticking on the concept of braided line and scissors, not so much scissors, is going to be Power Pro braided line. So Power Pro is one of those brands everyone knows. For braided line, it's up there with like a Spider Wire and being a very, very good brand. And it's one of those that, again, similar to the snaps and to the scissors, isn't one that's very likely to get damaged in shipping, isn't going to have many issues based on where you buy it. It's kind of the same product everywhere you go. So quick research here. If we're talking about, let's say we're talking about a 7-foot medium heavy or heavy fast bait caster, right? So a pretty standard bait caster that you're throwing most things on, you're going to be using braid. And so I'm going to say, let's say 30-pound braid, right? So we're going to talk 30-pound Power Pro, and you're going to need about 150 yards of it. Okay, so a 30-pound, 150-yard Power Pro spool at Academy and Tackle Warehouse was both $18.50 for that. Other places it got over $20, but at Walmart it was $13.87. I looked at it this morning. That was the price that was on Walmart this morning. I could add it to cart and click buy immediately if I wanted to. The line's not going to be damaged. It comes in the same spool, in the same box, goes on the shelf from Power Pro, and it's going to be the same exact quality at a Walmart as you would get at an Academy, at a Dick's, at a Tackle Warehouse, at a Shields, at wherever if you're buying it directly from Power Pro online. $13.87 is a pretty darn good deal. Obviously, if you're buying online, you have to start paying shipping. So Walmart, you can just walk in and get it for super cheap. Plus, while you're there, you can pick up some scissors for $2.97. Instead of spending $18.50 at Academy plus another $8 on scissors, now you're spending $2.97 on the scissors and $13.87 on the Power Pro, and you are all ready to cut and tie line all day and night. Since it's not a Walmart brand, since it's an actual true brand name, there's no reason not to buy it at Walmart, right? Obviously, a lot of people avoid Walmart brand of stuff, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But this is a true good brand that everyone uses Power Pro. Everyone likes Power Pro. It's got a great history of being excellent quality braid all the way through. And so that's why if you're buying Power Pro, I think you should buy it at Walmart. It is significantly, significantly cheaper. I mean, it's, almost $5 cheaper. It's, 25-30% cheaper at a Walmart than it is at an Academy or Tackle Warehouse or any of those other stores. And especially if you're going into like your local mom and pop shop. And trust me, I love a good mom and pop shop. I love supporting those businesses. I love going in there. It's always fun to meet new people and see the things that are in there. But sometimes their prices are a little jacked up, especially when we're talking about something that, typically I like to replace my line every year or two anyways, just so it, and I check the line, make sure it's fine. But, it's going to start to, braided line to braids over time. And you don't want anything to compromise your line, so you have to change it. And so if you're going to be changing line, you might as well get it on a better deal. So to recap what we should be buying at Walmart, in my opinion, the 3 things we should be looking for at Walmart is going to be your snaps from Eagle Claw, the ones for the quick changing, not the barrel swivel snaps, just the normal traditional little tiny snaps about the size of your pinky fingernail, real tiny little things. Braided line scissors, specifically the Ozark Trail brand, and then also Power Pro line. Those are the 3 you should buy at Walmart. I would not waste your money to buy them elsewhere. Well, of course, you have like a coupon or something, but, because we all have coupons. Now, let's move on to my opinion on what are the 3 things you should not buy at a Walmart, and you should, in fact, go to a sporting goods store, an outdoor store, fishing store, and spend your money there instead. So, the first one, the big 101, in my opinion, is going to be fishing combos. So, we've all seen it, right? You you go to Walmart, you're shopping for groceries, and say, I'm going to stop by the fishing section and see what they got. And you go back and you look up at the top of the shelves where they have all the rods and reels. One, they're never in the right place. At least around here in central Indiana, they're never in the right spot. So you don't know what you're paying for. You don't know what you're paying for each one. None of them are correct. The next one that you run into is because it's at Walmart, people play with them, people throw them, people don't take care of them when they're there. They sit there forever. Employees don't take care of them properly because they don't care about fishing. Whatever the instance may be, there's always bent eyelets, broken rod tips. If it's a 2-piece rod, half the piece of the, one of the 2 pieces missing. The handle's missing out of the spinning reel. You're missing the knob on the tension knob. There's always something wrong with them, right? There's such a good chance that they're damaged compared to just being in good condition. Plus, pricing-wise, they're really not all that great. Funny enough, so if we're looking at an Abu Garcia Max X bait casting combo, that is a very entry-level Abu Garcia bait caster combo. Amazon, Abu Garcia, and Walmart all sell it for $54.99. Now, the chances of you going to Walmart and getting one of these in good condition, where it's not bent eyelets, not scratched up, not a missing tension knob, not a broken rod tip, are pretty low in my opinion. Every time I go there, I look at them like, there's no way this place sells these rods because they're all destroyed. Because people come through and they steal stuff and they break stuff and they're inconsiderate, and that's not what we like. Another great example, you look at the Lew's Xfinity spinning reel and fishing rod combo. That's the exact name for it. It's the orange combo from Lew's. At Academy Sports and Outdoors is $60 even, and it's $68 at Walmart. So not only are you saving money by going to Academy, it's going to be in better condition. It seems like, whenever I walk into an Academy, and Academy is where I love to go shop for fishing stuff, they normally have good deals. They have a good selection. But everything in there just seems to be in better condition. I've never had an issue with, you always check, obviously, but, when I check a rod at Walmart, there's always something wrong with it. The inside of an eyelet's missing, so it's not going to be, your line's not going to be smooth, it's going to braid your line. There's always something wrong with the rod at Walmart compared to getting it at a Dick's or an Academy or a Tackle Warehouse or wherever. So, number one thing you should never buy at Walmart, I believe, is fishing combos. Individual fishing reels that are clamshelled and locked up, that gets a little different. At my Walmart, there's like what they call, I guess what they deem as the higher end reels, which is anything like over $40. Which that's a separate conversation on if that is actually higher end. But those are all in the clamshell packaging. Those are in a locked compartment. Those, I'm a little more okay with spending the money there. It depends on what it is, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is a true combo, a rod and reel combo sitting out on the shelf for anyone to pick up and play with. I would never buy those at a Walmart. The next thing I would never buy at a Walmart, and I actually fell into the trap early, but it's spinnerbaits. So when I first got into fishing, I had my push button rod and reel, and I needed a couple baits because I didn't want to just throw, bobber and worm. So I went to Walmart and I bought a frog because I didn't know what I was doing. Got a 5'6" ultralight push button. I'm throwing a topwater frog on there, so obviously that's going to go well. But then I also go and I see the dollar spinnerbaits there, and everyone loves the dollar promo spinnerbaits. But with my experience, and here's what I found. They're made by Strike King, funny enough. If you look them up, they're actually made by Strike King. But these spinnerbaits have such a bad tendency to, one, dull hooks. The hooks are not sharp at all. They're terrible cheap hooks. Obviously, they're dollar spinnerbaits. When these companies are putting out these super cheap baits, they're obviously compromising stuff, and the only thing to compromise there is going to be hardware on it. And the hardware that's important on a spinnerbait is going to be obviously your connection from, it's going to be your wire connection that holds everything together to your line, and then your hook. So the hooks are terrible. They bend out super easily on any fish that's over about half a pound. They don't stay sharp. The wire itself actually bends out, and the skirts on them are horrendous. Either they're thin, they're terrible. They don't look nothing looks natural. There's no, yeah. Another issue, obviously, you start talking about weed cover. If there's any sort of grass layer that you're trying to pull through, it hooks in real deep. And like I said, you start pulling on it, you're going to bend your wire out real bad. And a bent wire, you start bending wire out, and your spinnerbait doesn't swim right. And then you're in trouble, and then that thing's garbage. So the dollar spinnerbait I would not buy. Other alternatives you can look at, even if you're not looking to buy like a War Eagle that's like $10, you're really not wanting to spend money on like a Battle Baits minigun or anything, anything fancy like that. You can still look at in-house brands. The Bass Pro XPS brand comes at like $349 to like, I think it's $349 to $499 is what you can get them for. They have all sorts of sizes from 1/8 ounce to 1/4 ounce, 3/8, half ounce, 5/8 ounce, and they have all sorts of colors and varieties. And in my experience, they're a better spinnerbait. Academy's H2X spinnerbaits, they make them too. They have nice hook covers on them. They come nice and sharp. They're about, like I said, about the same price, $349 to $499 per. Plenty of different options on color, on size, on weight. The other one that you see a big difference in is when you buy the dollar spinnerbaits from Walmart. There's only ever one blade on them. You get one little willow blade or one little Colorado blade. You never get a second one. And that's the point of a spinnerbait. You want the multiple flashing bits on it to make it look like a little small school of fish. Well, when you start getting into H2X and Bass Pro XPS and all these other brands, they have multiple blades on them, and that's they mix and match. If it's a willow and a Colorado, or 2 willows or 2 Colorados, or an Indiana blade, or whatever kind of blade it is, but they have multiple, and that's the point. So the second thing I would never buy from a Walmart ever again would be the $1 Walmart spinnerbaits. I think they're trash. I don't think they're going to hold up to what you want. I think you're going to buy 6. You're going to use 6 or 8 of them, and spend your money on those a piece before you'd ever need a second Bass Pro one or a second H2X one, unless of course you lose it. But then that's a totally different story. And the third and final product I would never spend money on at Walmart would be soft plastics. And this is a very, very similar story to talking about the combos. So when you go to a Walmart and you look at the bottom shelf, typically where like you find like the spinnerbaits we were just talking about, there's always like the promo stuff for like $1.25. There's Creme brand, and there's going to be like the cheap Strike King, and there's going to be sometimes some Yamamoto stuff, and it's just kind of thrown everywhere and mixed and matched, and it's piled in, it's shoved down, it's been pushed on, it's been pulled on, and so often you find crawls that are a claw's torn off, and there's packs of worms where a worm's bent in half, and and it's ruined, doesn't hold its shape. And when you're spending money on soft plastics, obviously you want them to come in good condition. And for that reason, obviously people like Strike King, with their Rage lineup, like the Rage Craw, they have taken to having like the actual plastic clamshell packaging on the inside. But even like Yamamoto doesn't do that. And I've run into that at Walmart, where you pick up a pack of Yamamoto, and plus the sizing's different. When you go to like a Dick's Sporting Goods, you spend $8.99 on a pack of Yamamoto worms, which is a 10-pack. Well, it's $6.99 a pack at Walmart, but it's like a 5-pack of worms. So you're actually getting a worse deal. It's a little cheaper total, but it's a worse deal per amount compared to buying it at a Dick's or an Academy, etc. One excellent example I actually pulled up is, so I love the Zoom Trick Worm. The Zoom Trick Worm is one that I fish all the time, and specifically in the green pumpkin color. That's my favorite. It just works well around here. A 20-pack of them at Bass Pro is $6.29 and $5.99 at Walmart. That 30-cent difference to me is completely worth it to make sure that it's undamaged. It didn't sit in a hot truck, for 3 days. It hasn't been shoved down into a bin with 18 other different ones I have to hunt through and then get on the app and, scan the barcode and hope the app works to show me the price. For 30 cents, I'm going to buy them at Bass Pro. It's not a huge price difference for the same exact thing, but the peace of mind that it's going to be in good condition, it's going to do exactly what I want it to do, and I'm going to just have a good experience with it is totally worth it to me. So, to recap, the 3 things that I believe you should not buy at a Walmart and you should buy at a sporting goods store, fishing store, or whatever you want to call it. Number 1 would be your combos, your fishing combos. It seems pretty obvious, but Walmart still sells a ton of them, so that's why I wanted to bring it up. 2 would be the spinnerbaits, especially the dollar spinnerbaits from Walmart. And 3 would be soft plastics. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up the tackle box and answer some of your fishing questions. So the first one comes just from ChatGPT. And the question is, if a bass is following your lure but not committing to it, what is your go-to adjustment? Do you change your color? Do you switch your lure type? Do you change your retrieval speed? Do you change your depth? What do you do? So if I'm fishing, let's say so if it's something that's following, it's going to be obviously a moving bait of some sort, whether it's a buzz bait, it's a spook, it's a spinner bait, whatever. And that, I guess what type it is also varies. Let's for this instance, we're going to take a top water bait where you can let it sit. It's like a frog or a spook or a whopper plopper or a popper, something that floats. Then we're going to take a moving bait of some sort that sinks. So we're talking like, a sinking bait that you don't want to hit the bottom, so like a spinner bait or a buzz bait or a chatter bait. And then we're going to talk about something that you want to hit the bottom, like maybe a swim jig or, really just a swim jig, honestly. So in the instance of a topwater bait that floats, right? Or I guess we can throw a jerk bait in this too, like suspending jerk bait. If they're pursuing it but not committing, my best guess is that they're getting almost too good of a look at it and realizing that it's fake. That's not, that there's something off with it. Their spidey senses are tingling and they're saying, no, I don't want to commit to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my conditions, make sure that the coloring is right. If it's murky water, I've got dark. If it's clear water, I've got natural colors. So I'm going to make sure that my color is right. But I'm actually personally going to speed up my retrieval personally. I want to give them less time to look at it and more time to make it more of a reaction strike rather than a look at it, think about it, decide they want to do it and do it. I want to, if it's a whopper plopper, I'm burning it past their forehead. If it's a frog, I'm popping it real hard. I'm walking a spook real nice and quick. I'm not giving it time to just sit around and look at it. Now I've seen spook techniques and stuff like that. There are times where you are going to let it sit, but that's a totally different story. That is to entice them to come more, but that means they're already hitting. So yeah, so if I have bass that are following my lures like a top water, that means you're getting to look at it. I'm going to speed it up. Same thing with any sort of lure that swims that's going to sink that you don't want to touch the bottom. So chatterbaits, spinnerbaits, buzzbaits. You can give little pops in there. Little pops are always go on that just to give a little erratic motion. But I'm mostly just going to either on those, I'm probably going to change my color. But I'm also going to continue to speed up my technique. And then on lures that they're not biting that I can let sink, what I'm actually going to do, so something like a swim jig, what I like to do is if I notice one is trailing me, I'll bring it in, I'll slow it down, and I'll let it kind of die down to the bottom and then kind of hop it a couple times to act like a dying bait fish, and that's normally when I get hit. So at that point, I'm going to actually slow down my retrievals. Hopefully all that makes sense to you guys. Kind of hard to explain at times, but hopefully that all made sense to you. The next question we have is going to be from listener Colt from Indiana. He says, what is your favorite time of year to fish, and what are your favorite lures to throw during that time? That one's a very easy one to me, and it's going to be fall. Fall is the greatest time in the world for fishing. Fish are big, fish are agitated, fish are fired up, and they're wanting to eat, and they're just a ton of fun. They're aggressive. They're just, all they want to do is eat. So fall, I'm talking like end of August, early September-ish until like beginning of November. Water's still warm. It's still warm enough outside to, go and have some fun. Fish are still, they're not getting lethargic yet. They're very relaxed. And what are my favorite lures to throw that time? Reaction lures. Spinner baits, chatter baits, whopper ploppers, buzz baits, stuff that get these fish agitated and fired up. And man, sometimes when they just hit it and about yank the rod out of your hand, it is so fun. Spooks are fun at that time, but spooks are fun anytime. I like walking a spook. So Colt, my favorite time of year to fish is the fall, and I love throwing any sort of reaction style bait that's going to get a fish fired up. The next question comes back in from ChatGPT and is, what is your confidence bait when the bite gets tough? And how do I also how do I fish it? To trigger strikes from pressured or lethargic bass. My confidence bait as of recently has probably been a Ned rig. Again, that sounds kind of duh for the Midwest, but the Ned rig works, and it's not something that a lot of people throw. The Ned rig takes time to throw. It takes time to learn how to throw it properly. And also, it's one of those, it's a slow fishing technique. It's not an active technique, so it can get kind of boring. And so that's why a lot of people don't throw it. But I love a Ned rig because you can plop it right in front of a fish. You let it sit there with it's almost no action. They'll look at it and they'll think about it. and then they'll finally bite it. I love throwing a Ned rig. That's if I really need to bite, a Ned rig or some sort of, even maybe a trick worm. But I'm going to stick with Ned rig for this answer. All right, guys, final question of the day. This will be the last question of the pod today. Comes from listener Alex, also from Indiana. And he asks, why should I use 10 to 12 pound line when I know there's 50 plus pound line out there that I know won't break? That's an excellent question. So this comes, a great example of this is you're out fishing and you just keep getting broken off by fish on 10 pound line. Why shouldn't I just go up to a 50 pound line that I know these fish aren't going to break, right? So number one is going to rely on like water clarity and your conditions. So if it's really murky water, you can get away with throwing braid over fluoro. I'm not a huge straight fluoro guy. I like a straight mono on my bait casters, funny enough. I like, especially when you break in monofilament, I think it runs just so smooth. It's real pretty. It's real fun to throw. But I also do like throwing braid on there, and I like braid on my spinning gear. Braid is actually going to be a little bit thinner at times. I've noticed that I've got some Yo-Zuri 10-pound braid on my spinning combo, and it's actually a little bit thinner and harder to see than the old monofilament that I had on there, and it throws better, it's smoother. It's also actually more sensitive on a rod like that. But why use light line over heavy line? The biggest thing is going to be just bare necessity for it. Heavy line's expensive. So 50-pound braid compared to 10-pound braid is way more expensive for the same amount because there's more, obviously, strands of braid. It's thicker, it's heavier duty, and it costs more money to produce that, so they're going to up the price. The other thing is going to be line shyness. There are, line shyness is one that gets talked about, and at times that is applicable and times is not. So if I'm fishing out in Colorado in ultra clear, creeks where these fish, I'm throwing just the littlest, tiniest lure I can find, I'm going to be throwing really, really, really light line fluorocarbon. But, my ponds around here, going out to fish the White River, going to fish local parks where the water's dirty, there's only a foot or two visibility. These fish are not going to look at this braid and, at 10-pound or 20-pound braid and say, oh my God, that's line, I'm not going to buy it. These fish are looking at the lure and that's what they're eating. Remember, there's this ginormous hook sticking out of them, then they're still biting on it. So, why should you use smaller line? Pretty much just because of line shyness. If in a normal pond, unless you're throwing topwater, fish will notice a 50-pound line. Also, sensitivity is going to be a big one. It's because it's so much heavier. It's harder to feel. Also, that way it's going to make it harder to cast as far because you're trying to throw more weight. So casting distance gets affected by heavier line compared to a lighter line. So the couple reasons, like I said, one's going to be price. It's more expensive. 2 is line shyness. 3 is sensitivity. And 4 is going to be your casting distance. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's episode. That was our last tackle box question of this episode. Thank you all so much for listening this week and into episode 2 of the Tight Lines podcast. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it so far. I'm trying, hopefully going to get better at this, just learning, but please be sure to follow the show and leave us a nice 5-star rating as it will help our show to grow. New episodes will release every week at 4 a.m. on Wednesday, so please be sure to tune in then. We're currently available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We are working on iHeartRadio, working on Amazon, working on all of the other platforms. So, yeah, thank you guys again so much for listening and tuning in. And I will see you all on next week's episode. And until next time, tight lines, guys.